think it's important for people to understand, first, that we really are in a very dangerous place in terms of money and politics and its effect on Congress, on our system. And secondly, that it's not hopeless, that there are things that can be done. Those are my two principal messages. In terms of where we are now, I think it's important to understand just how bad things have gotten. The amount of money that members of Congress and candidates have to raise, but really members is what I focus on, because we're paying them to work. We're paying them to go to Congress and work together, solve our problems, give us a budget, decide on national policies. And they can't do that if they're spending all their time fundraising. They're spending all their time fundraising, in fact, because they're on this treadmill. They need X hours a day, and depending on your estimates, that's 3, 4, 5 hours a day, sitting in phone booths, calling people they don't know, asking for money. At a minimum, it seems to me they ought to be doing that at night when Congress is not in session and on weekends, rather than during the day. But it's deeper than that, of course, because they end up being beholden to the people who can bring them swaths of money. So whether it's PACs or industries, they end up fighting to get on the banking committee, the financial services committees, so they can go to New York and raise money because that's where the money is. And they need the money to run for re-election, to scare off primary opponents, to scare off somebody from the other party running against them in the general election. So they end up full-time fundraisers, and I think beholden to the people who are able to give them the money, help them raise the money. That becomes the Washington lobbying community. So they get to know that world, and lobbyists end up with special access. When members decide that they're going to leave, either if they're defeated or they want to earn more money, they end up often becoming lobbyists. In recent Congress, more than half of the members who have left, sometimes in the middle of their terms, have left to become lobbyists. So the incentives are all wrong. You end up as a member of Congress hoping you don't anger the lobbying community and trying to figure out if you get a job with this industry or that industry. That's not the way our founders structured our government. They assumed people would represent their own districts, be voted on by their districts, go home when they were finished. So they would be, particularly in the House, true representatives of the people. Today, much of the money that members raise comes from outside their districts, from groups that have interests having nothing to do with the people who are living in that district and voting for them. So that whole area of how the members are affected by this money chase is, I think, important for people to understand. Then the dimensions of the money chase, which have increased significantly because of super PACs. That's a name you won't find in any law, but it's the way we have evolved. And at that stage, I think it's important to pause and say, much of what we're talking about in terms of the problems with money and politics are not some system. It isn't that Congress said we should do this and it's worked badly. It is that this has simply evolved as a result of court decisions, and courts aren't policy-making groups. They don't know how the government should work or how campaigns should be financed. And what they've done over time is take, sort of cherry pick one piece or another out of our campaign finance system and change it. They've said, well, this Congress didn't have the authority to do this, or this is contrary to the First Amendment. But instead of going back and coming up then with a new system, what we're left with is sort of something that looks like Swiss cheese. It's full of holes, and at some stage it doesn't make any sense. And I think we've reached that stage. The other message that I think people need to hear is that this is not all hopeless. You have people say, well, after Citizens United, what can we do? The Supreme Court has said we can't regulate any of this. That's not actually what the court said. Other people will say we have to have a constitutional amendment Otherwise, everything will just get thrown out. The reality is that there are a number of things that can be done under current Supreme Court doctrine. There's no indication this Supreme Court would upend some of that doctrine, so I think it would be supportive. In the ethics area, in terms of quid pro quo and thus fundraising, which is shorthand for saying that I think Congress could end up saying that you can't vote on bills if the lobbyists for that group have been raising money for you, or you have been receiving money from the PACs of the people you are regulating. That, for instance, would make a big difference. Doing something about the revolving door so that members aren't lined up to go out and become lobbyists would make a big difference. Public funding is something the court has upheld again and again. There are a variety of ways to do that. You don't have to just have a government check given to a candidate. You could do donor matching, as many states do, so that citizens effectively choose who they're going to support, and then their contributions are matched. There are proposals to do a taxpayer rebate, where each registered voter would receive, say, $100 back of their tax money, which they can then give to any candidate or party committee they want to. Those are the sorts of things I think the court would uphold, even as it's currently constituted. We need to work on that. We need to come up with new areas of jurisprudence so that as the court changes over time, and it will, of course, we can revisit Citizens United and explain to a new court what went wrong, why it doesn't work the way this court thought it would, why these independent expenditures run a high risk of being corrupting and having the appearance of corruption, which the court thought they didn't. So I think over time we can revisit something like Citizens United, but in the meantime we can get disclosure, which we don't have. We could require that independent spending be truly independent, which in many cases it's not, with agents of the candidate or family members even running the so-called independent expenditures. Those are the sorts of things that we can address under current law.